What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to another edition of Green with Envy here on the 617 podcast, proudly brought to you by Crowworthy. Checking in after a long Thanksgiving weekend full of friends, fun, and festivities. It is your boy Will Weir checking in and joining me as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of the podcast, the one and only Greg Menakis. What's good, man?
What's good, bro? I'm glad we're both alive after that crazy weekend.
lot of stuff going on in our lives out here in Austin. We had a big wedding with two of our close friends this past weekend. Got to get down, got to do some dancing. Been a minute since really,
Yeah,
we,
bro.
we,
We
we
were
talked
we were
about this at the
busting it
wedding.
down.
Yeah, it feels like, we're 32 now, but I feel like, in one way, the days of our youth, of like that, exuberance right after college up until about the mid to late 20s doesn't feel that long ago in some ways. And then in some respects, it feels like, man, that's a whole other world ago. And, down here in Austin, live music capital of the world, like, when we were in our prime, it was a lot of dance floors, a lot of aggressive drinking nights. Let's just be real about it, and a lot of late nights. And now it's like, man, the steam to get that thing going again, it takes a while. And when those dance floors break out, it's almost like it takes a minute to kind of warm up and remember where the shoulders used to go and if the legs or knees even bend anymore. Like it's just a new world.
Well, it's always my favorite part of going to any sort of function with you is when you are for the most part the brownest person at the party. And there was one guy who kind of like stole your thunder a little bit. But whenever Will gets to a party and he looks around and he sees, okay, like there's really nobody in here that can really break it down on the dance floor, and he knows that he's going to be the best dancer, even though Will's not like he's not like a break dancer. He's not going to pull
No,
any
it's just
fancy
confidence.
moves.
It's the only
pure
superpower there
confidence.
is. It's just
Confidence, like you got a great Antoine Walker wiggle going in your shoulders, and you just kill it, man, every time. So that's one of my favorite things about any party with you is just when I see it's about to happen, I'm like, all right, gather around, everybody. Will's about to break it down. Then the go Will, go Will, go
But see,
Will.
you've learned one of the key aspects being my best friend. Like when there's expectations and I'm like, I'm not there yet. That's what I'm like. All right, we gotta back this up. I gotta just kind of like ease back into the, we gotta back out of the middle for a little bit. And it's gotta
Yeah.
be the right moment. When the right moment hits, it's a ton of fun. And this whole weekend, was
You
a
pick
lot
your
of fun.
moment really well. You pick your moment really
Yeah,
well
you
every
got to
time.
pick and choose. You got, like I said, it's about confidence. It's also about working smart. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I'm not a. I don't. You don't got to be a volume shooter. So I got to make sure I don't let other people influence my hitting that right moment, like you're saying. So, but yeah, we had a great time, and real quick, we had a couple people come up to us at this wedding. This is a wedding out here in Austin, so. We had several people come up to us and tell us that they listen to the podcast, and it was people that really caught me off guard, that they're listening to what we do. They're not even necessarily Celtics fans, but they appreciate what we have to say. Some are just basketball fans, some are just friends, and so if they are listening, didn't fall on deaf ears. That shit really means a lot. So appreciate y'all reaching out to us like that and listening to our friendship and the bullshit we spew every now and then.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And when I heard you were introducing yourself as a podcaster this weekend, I was like, oh, shit, that's where we're at? Okay, I'm introducing myself as a podcaster. So that was pretty fun, man, getting to talk to some people who listen to the pod. And shout out to everybody from the wedding, man. Shout out to our friends, Lynn Murphy, Vinny Calzone, threw a great wedding. Really, really killed it. Bill Murphy with one of the best what do you even call that? He's the father of the bride,
Yeah.
one of the best father of the bride speeches that I've ever heard. So shout out to everybody that was at the wedding. That was a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun. And I have to talk about my night when we got back real quick.
Yeah, man. Give
Right?
us a quick update.
So I get back and I had a wag walker. So the wag walker is like, or some people might use Rover. It's just like it's like an Uber for dog walkers, basically, if you can't find a normal dog walker. So we get a wag walker. We don't know this person, and they're vetted by the company. And normally wag walks are always great, right? You get updates about it, like they send you little videos, what's going on. And this person, when we got back at 2 a.m., left a whole bunch of shit open. My back door was wide open. My dog Blaze, who's a 10-year-old pit bull, is like limping around the house. He can't put any weight on one of his legs. And my drunk ass looks at him and I'm just like, what is wrong with him? So I start like dog WebMDing what could be wrong with my dog. And he won't put any weight on his left leg. So I'm looking at it and my drunk ass thinks that his Achilles tendon is gone. Like, I'm just like, I don't see it. Like, I'm looking at one Achilles, I'm looking at the other one, and I'm like, I'm holding his Achilles. I'm like, there's nothing
Yeah.
there. It's just skin. The
It's
Achilles tendon is missing.
it's like one of those pictures where you're trying to match up, like, hey, what's different about these two pictures? So you're just looking at like his two back legs. All right, something's here, something's not there.
For sure, but then he like lays down on the ground and he won't put any pressure on that leg. So his leg was so limp because he's such a fucking drama queen that I think his Achilles tendon just like went somewhere else for the night. Like, it wasn't there. I called Danielle over. I'm like, "Where's his Achilles?" She's like, "I don't know." And he won't put any pressure on it. He's whining. I'm like, he ruptured his Achilles, right? So I'm freaking the fuck out. I'm like, my dog just ruptured his Achilles. It's a $5,000 surgery. It's 8-week recovery. He's a 10-year-old dog. I'm having like the worst possible thoughts ever. Like, do I have to like maybe put my dog down? Like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
what is happening,
Your
right?
mind goes to some dark places when something like this happens and it's, 2, 3 a.m. and you're trying to, process everything. Your mind can go to some pretty weird places.
Yeah, man. It was tough to process. And I like barely got any sleep. Woke up the next day. He wasn't really walking the next day either. And then today, when he woke up, he did the thing in bed where, like, I know he's feeling good because he'll roll on his back and he'll just like stick the one arm up, the victory, Blaze doing his victory pose. I'm like, okay, the homie's feeling a little better today, and he's still limping a little bit. But at this point, I'm like, I think he's gonna be okay, but I gotta triple check with the vet. So we take him in for his X-rays, and basically they tell us that maybe he twisted his foot. He has a twisted foot and he's going to be okay with some pain medication. So within like 48 hours, I go from thinking I might have to put my dog down to, oh, he's fine. He just twisted his
Yeah.
foot and he doesn't like any sort of pain. And when you put it in my head the other day, the time in South Padre when he was a puppy and he went swimming and had drop tail and like he curled up in the corner like he got shot, I was like, man, this dude just doesn't know how to handle pain. He can't
Yeah.
handle whatsoever. Any
In South
sort of
Padre,
pain.
we thought he like ate chocolate or something, or like there was whatever was like poisonous. What else was poisonous to dogs? Like we were like, dude, what did we leave out? Like the whole crew was like, shit,
Mhm.
was this on me? Like what
Yep.
happened here?
Yep. And now, I mean, dude, like now, after like one dose of pain medication in him, he's like running around my backyard.
He's
I'm
back to
like,
old Blaze.
are you kidding me, bro? Like, I had the worst thoughts ever about what was gonna go down, and you're completely fine. So I'm gonna monitor him over the next couple of days just to triple check. But like, I couldn't believe that shit, man. And then I posted about it. So now I got people like, oh shit, like your dog
Yeah.
ruptured your Achilles. But I was talking to Danielle. She's like, oh, that's embarrassing. I was like, yeah, it's embarrassing, but it's like probably best case scenario. Like, I get to embarrass myself. I don't have to spend $5,000, and my dog is completely fine.
Yeah, like you will take that versus the alternate reality of what you thought it was.
Oh,
You know
of
what I mean?
course,
Like I'll be
100% of the
embarrassed, I'll save the money, and my dog is ultimately fine. He's just a drama queen, and
time.
let's keep it moving. You know what
And
I mean?
thank God I have a podcast to talk about it.
Keep everybody updated. We just talked last time about how I'm a new dog dad. So now, I heard that story from you and I was like, oh my God, I never even thought about something like, and it seems, just obviously shitty wag walker or whatever, like left
Mhm.
all that shit open. But it was like trying to think of like what could have happened. It's just like he probably just ran around too much. But
Yeah.
it was just the thought of thinking like, damn, what if I leave the door open and Taco just doesn't know that he should stop running at some point, and this is
Mhm.
what could happen. So,
Exactly.
it's just one of those things that I'm really glad, Blaze is gonna be all right. We get to keep it moving with our guy. We were worried about him for a minute here, but seems like he's gonna be able to keep it moving.
For sure. We'll post some pictures of Blaze so y'all can see how cute he is.
Yeah, well, hopefully they're following you so they could see the original picture of his ruptured tendon, and now
Yeah.
we can picture him like 3 days later. It's a miracle he's back.
Right.
But shout out to our guy Blaze, and we hope that everyone listening here had a great Thanksgiving break. We appreciate y'all joining us. So here's the plan for today. We're gonna give a quick recap of what's happened since we last got with y'all, which was right after that win against the Rockets on Monday night. Give you a quick recap of what's happened up till now. As we're recording, this is right after the Raptors game, which was a 109-97 win for the Celtics, bringing them back to one game over 500. Excuse me. We're going to hit those games here for just a minute. Then what we're going to do, we got a teacher in our midst, and we don't necessarily use his expertise quite enough. So the coach going to go ahead and put on his professor cap here for a minute. We're going to give y'all some first quarter grades. We're going to continue this theme throughout the rest of the season. We're 21 games in now, so right at about that quarter mark for an 82-game schedule. Today we're going to hit the head coach, and we're going to hit what we're calling the core four, which is going to be Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and Rob Williams. And then we're going to follow this up with part 2 on Wednesday night, where everybody here listening can join us for a Green with Envy post-game live following the Celtics and Sixers on Wednesday night. We'll give you the recap of that game right after, and then after that, we'll jump right into part 2 of our first quarter grades. But as I said, let's talk about this last week here real quick, Greg, before we get to those grades. Just resetting it here. Last time we checked in, big win against the Rockets. And I say big win. They have 2 wins on the season. I don't know how big of a win that could be, but followed that up with a dud against the Nets, another dud against the Spurs, which included a 15-0 run in the fourth quarter for San Antonio to lock that down on Friday night. But they bounced back tonight with a win against the Raptors, 109-97. I know last time we talked, Greg, we were feeling real good about this team kind of turning a corner. Specifically, Jayson Tatum had 4 straight 30-point games, thinking about him turning a corner and, maybe, hey, we've been talking about this or that being, what's wrong with this team, but that maybe it was just, hey, Jayson Tatum wasn't hitting shots.
Yeah.
And it's a couple games later, so I don't want to act like everything we talked about up to that point doesn't matter, but it did feel like there was a shift. And again, Jayson Tatum didn't have a great performance tonight against the Raptors as we record. So where are you at now with some of those feelings? Do you still feel like there's that momentum? Have we lost that momentum? What's your thought? Where's your mindset at?
No, I mean, the Nets game, I think that was, we had that one coming. We've been playing some great basketball, and sometimes, the big dog on the block gotta, kind of gotta show the little puppies that they're still the big dog in the park. And that's kind of what happened. Kevin Durant and James Harden. James Harden had a great performance. Kevin Durant just dominated the game. And Patty Mills, Patty Mills got his revenge on Udoka. Udoka said during the summer, we know how to lock his ass up. Down. And he killed us, man. So that Nets game, I wasn't really tripping over that Nets game, to be honest with you. The Spurs game, it's just like when the Celtics get off to such poor shooting starts and they have to claw their way back, like at some point in those big comebacks, you run out of steam. I don't know. I was, we were at the wedding, so I was unable to watch that game live, and it's blacked out down here. So I've only been able to kind of piece it together. I haven't been able to watch the whole thing front to back. But from what I saw, DeJounte Murray just went crazy, and this is something we're going to talk about with Ime. And I actually think he made the adjustment tonight where he kind of just rolled with this lineup that he kind of just assumed would be the best lineup to play versus watching the game and seeing who was actually playing well that night. And Murray, when he hit that last shot over Schroeder and he said he was too small and he was like, get out of here. He kind of gave him the get him out of the game. I mean, he was 100% right. Like Schroeder probably shouldn't have been in the game in that situation. And you can't, a 15-0 run to end the game, that's inexcusable. And that, to me, that's on everybody. You can blame Ime, you can blame the players, but you got to figure out a way to at least put a couple buckets on the board. And when you watch down the stretch, it seemed like the Celtics just missed some pretty easy shots. So maybe those shots will go in, but we keep saying maybe those shots will go in, and they're not really going in. But yeah, that's kind of what my takeaway. I don't really sweat the Nets game. We'll have another shot at them later in the year. The Spurs game's kind of an anomaly. And tonight, man, from the beginning of the game, I thought they played with force. I thought they played with a lot of activity. Tonight was the first night I felt like Jaylen was back, like he was playing athletically. Tatum was great distributing. And then, not having Schroeder on the court, it was cool to see the other guys have to step up. Romeo really stepped up. Grant's been playing great. Richardson's back. He played great. Smart. We're going to talk about Marcus in a little bit, but Marcus continued with his hot streak.
Yeah, I think tonight was really interesting. I knew we were going to do this podcast coming into it, so I was kind of looking at it through the lens of what we're about to do here with these first quarter grades. And I feel like there's so many different parts of tonight's win against the Raptors that match up in one way or another with some part of how we're going to break down these grades about either what it has said about this team up until now or what needs to happen to improve and has been something that's lingering. I think there was a lot of that in this game. One of the things that I'll talk about briefly, because I'm sure we'll hit on it again here, was, the paint touches tonight. And you mentioned, Dennis Schroeder being out, and that's the number one guy that comes to my mind, at least for now, especially with Jaylen having missed so much time. When I think about who puts pressure on the rim for the Celtics, who really gets in the paint and causes the defense to shift and react, it's been Dennis Schroeder this year for me. So not having him on the court and still seeing that be, a point of emphasis for the team collectively. So I don't think there was just one individual. I think there's a few you could pick out that stood out. You mentioned Jaylen, Marcus. I think Romeo did a good job of it as well. Even Tatum, without shooting well, I thought he had stretches where he was bringing the ball into the paint. Enos was great down there tonight as well. And, I really think that that was important to see for this team in this game. They're 11-10. And sometimes your record kind of is what you are. And through the first quarter of the season, Celtics are kind of a 500 team. They're an average
Mhm.
team
Yep.
right now. Doesn't mean that's who they're going to be. And that could go either way. That doesn't just mean that they're going to automatically improve. Like, I think that this team can be better. But at a certain point, the results are going to be the results. And yes, you can always point to the fact that the Celtics are never 100% healthy. But if you look around the NBA and there's a lot of parity this year, no one's 100% healthy.
Yep.
There's plenty of teams. Michael Porter Jr. just went down for the Nuggets the other day. We're playing the Sixers on Wednesday. Obviously, they've got the whole Ben Simmons saga. And then Embiid misses 2+ weeks with COVID, and they're the same record as us. They didn't fold up. They definitely fell from where they were without Embiid, which is hard not to. But they're 10-10 right now. We'll see what their record is come Wednesday, but they're going to be right there in the mix with us. So it's really hard to use that as an excuse anymore with like any type of just not being healthy. So when you're average, you're kind of average, but it is early and there is going to be opportunities to improve. So we'll have to see, but they got the job done tonight. That's the most important thing. Even if it wasn't always pretty, to your point, the mindset was there from the jump.
Mhm.
And that was ultimately the difference, especially with the Raptors being short.
Yeah, and before we move on to our quarter point grades, I just want to give a shout out to my guy Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes killing it for the Raptors, my favorite rookie by far. And we talked about this on the pod. So for our loyal listeners, you know that I am a huge Scotty Barnes guy. I on the pod with Jonathan Sharks. I think I actually mentioned it on the pod before that, but I talked about it with Sharks, and we've actually been emailing back and forth about Scotty Barnes a little bit. And I mentioned how Scotty Barnes is a year two Giannis. And lo and behold, on the broadcast tonight, Scalabrini talks about how Scotty Barnes reminds him a lot of a year two, year three Giannis.
I couldn't believe he said year two. I was like, I texted you fucking Scal because I was listening to it and I was like,
Word
this
for
is
word what I
pretty
said,
much our conversation. Like, did Amina put him onto the 617 pod? Scal, you out there listening? You out there
right?
taking our notes, knowing like, man, ain't nobody gonna give these guys credit. If you
Come
taking
on
our
the
stuff,
pod,
let us
Scal.
know, Scal. Come on the pod, we can talk about it. But yeah, as soon as I heard that, I had to text you because I was like, this is pretty much what you said. I don't know what 3 weeks ago, a month ago,
Yeah.
however long it was. So.
It was literally after the first time I saw him play. It was like in the preseason. I was
Yeah,
just like,
it was. That's what it was.
I was
That's
like,
why I
this
was.
dude is year two Giannis. His floor is Sean Marion. And then Sharks called me crazy.
Yeah, it was a fireball of a take, but I mean, it's got some legs here. So Scotty Barnes is your guy. He almost killed us in that third
I
quarter. He had
know.
that little stretch where he
Fucking
went off.
love that guy.
He's one of those guys where at least early in his career, he's gonna have those couple of games where he's not a great shooter by any means right now, but he hits a couple of threes like he did tonight, and then he influences the game and all the other stuff that he does. That you're just gonna be like, man, if this guy's hitting shots, what do we do?
Yep.
But the Raptors just didn't have, without OG, without Gary Trent tonight, they just weren't going to have the offensive firepower or the depth to be able to win this game. This is a game the Celtics should have had, probably even a little bit easier than they really did. They ended up securing it late, which was nice to see, given some of those stats Forsberg laid out that I've got in here for us to talk about a little bit later. But, with that, let's go ahead and transition into these first quarter grades. So we're 21 games in. Celtics are 11-10, currently stand ninth in the East. They'd be in the play-in tournament if the season ended today. Luckily, it does not. Still over 60 games to be played, so no need to panic. But we do want to kind of check in sporadically throughout this season as to where the team is at. So I mentioned at the top, we're going to hit Coach Ime Udoka, we're going to hit the Jays, we're going to hit Marcus, and we're going to hit Lob Williams on this podcast. We will do the newcomers and other role players on Wednesday, so definitely tune back in for that. Make sure you're following us on all the appropriate social media channels and our YouTube channel. Come check us out. Come join the fun. But before we get started, we always talk about context is very important. So we want to provide y'all with the context of how we're looking at these grades. And Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you here. Kind of set this up because I know you're basing this off of what we'll call the Jalen Rose rule. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Jalen and Jacoby. I actually haven't tuned in a while. I got to tune back in. Those are my guys. So I call these grades the Jalen Rose rule grades, where Jalen always says success is a function of realistic expectations, right? So not all players are going to be graded to the same standard. They're graded within their role on the team. So, for example, I am not grading Grant Williams and Jayson Tatum on the same scale. They're graded on different scales, and that's pretty much all you need to know. We're going to give you the expectation of what we had for them coming into the season, what has been the reality so far, and then we're going to look at how they can improve moving forward. And that's basically what we got.
Well, then let's get into it. I'm gonna have you start with the first one. Let's go with the head coach to start. So let's go with Ime. Give us the expectation, the reality, and then we'll both give our grades, and then we'll jump off from there.
Well, the expectation was that Nia Long would be at every home game, and I don't think that's been the case. So you
I feel
get
like I've
into
seen her. She was at like the Knicks game to start the
yeah.
season, and I'm not sure I've seen her since. I thought it was gonna be like it was almost gonna be like a competition between like, all right, who's the better celebrity at this point? Is it Hannah Horford or is it Nia Long? We have not gotten the competition, but it's the competition we want.
Yeah, we need more Nia. So if you don't want an F minus Ime, bring Nia to the game. No, but for real. So the expectation for Ime was basically Brad Stevens had lost the locker room, and all on court issues stemmed from his inability to lead the guys. That was the narrative coming out of last season. So Udoka, the expectation was that he'd be this new age coach that would implement a system and a culture that would allow all players to thrive, and that would just like cause all the stink from the Kyrie era and on. All that stuff would be washed away. The unfortunate reality is that Ime has been more of a stubborn coach who has yet to recognize the value of shooting or end game adjustments. And as we said earlier, tonight he was the first time I really saw him make more situational subs. So he's chosen veterans over young players. So he sacrificed roster development for long-term defense first identity. And whether or not you agree with that, that's kind of been his recipe for what he wants to build for this team moving forward. He's playing the long game. He's not saying, all right, we need to develop Neesmith and Pritchard like right away. He's trying to have them earn their stripes this year and have them beat out veterans who deserve to be, quite frankly, deserve to be playing over them. Do you want to talk about how to improve, or do you got anything to add to the expectations of reality?
No, I think you nailed the expectation in reality. I mean, that pretty much hit on all the notes that I have here. And I think before we do the how to improve, let's go with what would be the grade that you give him so far?
I'm going to give him a C minus.
C minus. Okay, I went with a C plus. And do you want me to start with the how to improve, and then we'll swing it back to you?
Sure.
So I went with the C plus here for Ime Udoka, and unfairly or not, if you're around 500, I feel like you have to be in that C range. So I think that's appropriate. I think then depending on how you feel he's done, you could give him a C plus, you could give him a C, you can give him a C minus. Any of those, I'd find a hard time to probably quibble with. One of the things I do have to point out that we're giving them C and C plus here. Celtics had the 8th easiest strength of schedule so far to start the season. This is something that we had talked about, going into the season, that this first quarter was important to kind of build up some wins, because there is just a monster stretch in December coming up that starts on Wednesday with the Sixers, in which they are playing nothing but teams that are expected to be in the playoffs or in title contention for pretty much an entire month. So it is going to be a tough stretch coming up here as we head into the second quarter. But, I went with a C plus, and really the reason that I went from a C to a C plus, which I was struggling with, is one of the things that I felt this team lacked. You talked about the changeover from Brad Stevens to Ime, was the lack of an identity. And I do feel that one thing that Ime has established is that defensive identity. We are a defensive team. We're not going to lose on the defensive end. And sometimes to a fault, he's stuck with those rotations or stuck with his guys in certain situations that he feels comfortable with, defensively. So, I think that's why I went with the C plus, but how we can improve, you kind of already touched on this. What I call it is he needs to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I think he did that a little bit tonight, because you saw how reluctant he's been to play Enes Kanter. And Al Horford played a great game. Al Horford's numbers are great. Al was having a great game throughout. But the lineup at the end where he had Romeo and Enes out there, just kind of was working. And to your point, it feels like earlier in the season, he would have had to pull it back because his guy is, having Al Horford out there, or having, whoever else it may be from that rotation. Because we talked about a couple episodes ago, sometimes he just feels like he picks these 8 or 9 guys. He'll throw in one guy just to get some extra minutes, but it's those 8 or 9 guys, and they're going to be subbed in the way that he has it mapped out pregame, kind of like they talk about in baseball. They go to the binder and they have it marked off for everything. But tonight he did a good job of changing that up. So I'm hopeful that, for me, the biggest thing to improve is getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, when, a lineup that you weren't expecting to maybe work and you're having success with it, being able to experiment, that maybe that is something that we're going to see improve. So I'm encouraged with tonight. It's not enough to get him out of the C range. And obviously when you're 11-10, you're kind of right in that meaty part of the curve. So that's where I went with Ime C plus, and getting more comfortable with experimentation and being a little uncomfortable on the sidelines. What do you got, Greg?
Yeah, for sure. And just looking at the difference between the last game against the Spurs and this game against the Raptors, right? In terms of how many guys played over 20 minutes, because Ime seems to lean on certain guys for, they'll have some games where it's like four guys over 35 minutes. Like, what the hell are
Yeah.
you doing? Tonight, we had 8 people play over 20 minutes, right? I would wonder if that's a season high. Against the Spurs, we only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So we only had 6 guys play over 20 minutes in the other game. So he was definitely a little bit more willing to kind of go into the depth on the bench, which is great. With Ime and Romeo, they played well. They were rebounding. Toronto was having a hard time keeping them off the glass, and I thought that was a big reason why the Celtics were able to pull away. And then, to your point, he also benched Jaylen until the last 4.5 minutes of the game. When Marcus got his 5th foul, he went back to Jaylen. But Jaylen, he wasn't playing bad, but he wasn't playing great. Like
Mhm.
having Jaylen on the court versus having Romeo on the
Yeah.
court, which is
I wasn't
kind
sure if
of
that was a minutes restriction as well, maybe with the still returning from injury,
for
but
sure.
your point still stands, but I'm just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think tonight, there was one time for one possession he subbed out Canner for Grant. It was at like 8 seconds left in the first quarter or something like that, or maybe the second quarter, and he made the situational sub. And made a note. I was like, "Ooh, Ime making situational subs. I haven't seen that before." So there were a couple things tonight where I was like, "Oh, maybe he's starting to figure this out a little bit." You don't have to just play, and I know Schroeder was out, but you don't just have to play Schroeder 38 minutes because he's the only guy in your mind that can drive and get into the paint. You
Yeah.
saw if everybody has the drive and kick mentality like they did tonight, there's plenty of guys that can get into the paint. And if guys learn how to make that extra pass, which they really seem to enjoy, like Marcus was really enjoying that extra pass. He's played so well lately, man. But Ime learning these lessons 20 games into his first season as a head coach, maybe you want him to learn those lessons a little bit quicker, but not all development is linear, right? So
Yeah.
with him, it's not going to go game to game. Sometimes he's going to regress 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 5 steps back, half a step forward, whatever it's going to be with you, Ime. Right now, I think a C minus. If you look at it as a C minus, it might sound bad, but if you think of it as on a scale of 1 to 10, we're basically giving him a 6.7 to 7
Yeah,
to 7, right?
exactly.
So if you think of it that way, it's not as bad as a C minus might sound. I think if you grade it on a scale of 1 to 10, you hear 6.7, 7, you probably more agree with me than saying C minus. Some people probably like, whoa, dude, C minus, that's really
Yeah.
bad. For my man Will, C minus is great though.
I love it. That's how I got through high school. But no, I mean, a couple numbers I wanna just throw out there.
Yeah, hit me with them.
Obviously, I think, when I talk about, establishing that identity, when you look at the last 13 games, so prior to that, I don't have it updated right now, the Celtics are 3rd in defensive rating over that time. And overall, they've held their opponents under 109 times in 21 games. So, I think that is really important to acknowledge for a rookie coach to be able to come in, have the locker room to that point where he can establish it. And I know there's been some hiccups with, post game interviews and all that, but he kind of came in with a plan, and part of that plan is work. So he deserves that credit. But you really hit on the part that, and we've kind of both talked about this throughout the substitution patterns, the amount of minutes that he plays guys. And Forsberg laid him out on the broadcast tonight. I had him here in my notes. I swear to God, not just stealing from Forsberg like Scal steals from us, but Celtics last in offensive rating in the NBA in the fourth quarter, and then 25th defensively. And
Mhm.
for me, when I looked into this earlier today, it jumped out to me exactly what you were saying about the amount of guys that are playing and the time that they're playing, where typically it's going to be 5 or 6 guys playing over 20 minutes and sometimes 4 or 5 guys playing over 30 minutes. It's like that has to be showing up in these fourth quarter numbers. And so it's one of those things that, looking forward, as we talk about how we can improve, hopefully that's something that we'll see start to change. If you have depth, that's great. But if you're not using it to your advantage, what does it really mean? Hopefully Ime is kind of figuring that out here.
Yeah, for sure, man. Do you want to move on to the next guy?
Yeah, let's go Jayson Tatum. I'll take this one here to get us started. So Jayson Tatum, expectation coming into the season was that he takes the leap, takes another leap, but a very hard leap to be one of those top 10 players within the NBA, becomes, not just a surefire all-star, borderline superstar player, but is going to be one of those guys that year in and year out, you pencil into those all NBA predictions beginning of the season. It's, where do I find a spot for Jayson Tatum? That was the expectation. Reality, he can be that guy. He can be the best player any given night, but the consistency has not been there. And maybe the most key element to that has been his shooting on the season, which has just straight up been poor. It's just been bad. And,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that we'll talk about here. But I feel like that's really the very simple expectation versus reality of Jayson Tatum so far this season. Anything else you would add to those expectations and realities?
No, man, you hit it. You hit the nail right on the head. The biggest thing, the biggest difference between a star and a superstar or a megastar or an all NBA guy is consistency. And Tatum's pretty much like every other game, he's going to be bad or he's going to be great. And tonight was an interesting case study because tonight he was horrible shooting, but he was a great playmaker. I thought he was making awesome decisions throughout the game. That led to a lot more ball movement. So if Tatum, when he does not have his shot, as long as he can continue to be a playmaker for other guys, then he's going to be okay because the shot's not going to be there every night, but you got to be able to bring it on both ends of the court and bring it as a playmaker for your guys.
What'd you go with for a grade for him?
Considering we were looking for shoe-in All NBA guy, I'm giving him a C.
Okay. I had him at a C as well. I was debating a C plus, but to your point, like they're not drastically different, but I gave him a C, and it really all just ties to exactly what you're saying is that we needed him to be, or we need him to be that all NBA guy. And so this is the tough part about Jayson Tatum giving him a grade. Sneakily, I think he's probably gotten better at just about, most parts of his game, but the part that's failed him has been the most reliable part of his game
Mm-hmm.
to this point. And
Yeah.
so it kind of makes it hard for me to judge because, we talked about him turning that corner when he had the string of, 430 plus games. Like, all right, Tatum's back. And maybe we can just look back on the season at the beginning and be like, man, Tatum just wasn't hitting the shots. Because if he hits most of those shots, the Celtics probably only have 5 losses or something
Mm-hmm.
like that, And when you look at the numbers, man, it's just really drastic how much his shooting is off this year.
Terrible.
Overall, he's shooting 40%. The lowest he's ever shot in the season was his rookie year, 45%. And then from three, he's shooting 32%. Lowest he ever shot once again was 2018-19, where he shot 37.3%. So he's an overall roughly about a 40% three-point shooter. And from the field, usually he's somewhere between about 45 and 48. So let's say about 46, 47. So he is not even close to the percentages that he has put up over the first several years of his career. And so that's what makes it really hard because even though I think to your point, his passing feels like it's gotten better, even though the assist numbers are down. And you can go check out Dan Greenberg from Barstool Sports. He loves tweeting out the what's it?
Potential assists.
Potential assist percentage. Thank you. That accompanied Jayson Tatum, and he passes out a lot of those double teams. And the Celtics as a whole, as a team, these numbers are pretty bad here. Just listen to this for a second. The Celtics as a team shoot 33% on open threes, meaning there's no defender within 4 to 6 feet. On wide open threes, and when there's no defender 6+ feet away, they shoot as a team 34%. And they get a good amount of those looks throughout each game. And a lot of those do come off double teams that Jayson Tatum draws. So he was really hard to figure out what to do with him, but he's just been that bad with his shooting that I felt like there was no way that I could give him anything higher than a C because of where the expectations were.
Yeah. And, with his shooting, real quick on the passing thing, one thing he's getting really good at is that LeBron pass where he's kind of like dribbling at the top of the key or from the wing. He's kind of like waiting for the defense to take one step in the wrong direction and then firing the ball across to a shooter. He did that like 3 or 4 times tonight. And I think that's a pass that I think he's going to have in his bag all the time, ready to go.
Yeah.
But with
And those
shooting,
shots were made too, which is obviously a huge difference.
exactly. And if they make the shots, he's going to be a more willing passer. So with Tatum, right, some interesting numbers for his numbers with wins and losses. And tonight was an anomaly. But in wins, he's shooting 37% from 3. In losses, he's shooting 26% from 3. He's already had 7 games this year, 8 games, including tonight, under 20% from the field. That's crazy. 8 games out of 21 in which he shot under 20%. The Celtics, including tonight, are now 3-5 of those games. And he has 9 games in which he shot over 40%, and the Celtics are 6-3. So only 9 games over 40% from the field. That's like not from 3, from the field.
That's wild. And something that was crossing my mind as you're doing the breakdown of him in wins and losses is when you think of his season, 2 of his best games came in losses. The Dallas game and the Atlanta game. And so you think about how they're boosting up those loss numbers, which are already really scary, and what those look like if you take those 2 games out.
Yeah. And for me, in terms of like how to improve, right? I think it's easy to say shoot better. To me, it's like more shoot efficiently. He was averaging 22 field goal attempts per game, 25 in October, 21 in November. I don't think he shot too many shots tonight, even though it was
He
terrible.
he didn't. That's what I was gonna say. Is he only shot the ball 16 times tonight,
Yep,
and that's
which is good.
exactly what I had in here was let the game come to him and not
Yep.
force it. To your point, and at least I think he did a pretty good job of that tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And one more thing I'd like to see out of Tatum is he has this annoying tendency when he gets like within 5 or 6 feet, rather than going up. Like he did this in the Spurs game where he like drove hard to the basket. He hit the brakes. Two guys went flying to the baseline right in clutch time, and he took like a 6 foot turnaround jump shot. And it's just like, dude, just lay the ball up, man. If you just
Yeah,
like jump up and put your arm out, you will be a foot from the rim. Just do a finger roll. Like, what are you doing?
Space Jam
Um,
style.
exactly. And like watching Luca, I've been watching a lot of the Mavericks, just so I can have more things to talk about with Sharks. And with Luca, like when he drives to the basket, guys fly off of him, and then he might shoot that fadeaway, but he also just goes straight up. And he's like, all right, if you're gonna have to foul me because I'm gonna absorb the contact and go straight up. And Tatum has that ability. He's just like kind of, I don't know if he's in his own head about missing so many layups this year, about getting fouled or not getting fouled, but he has this tendency to shoot that fadeaway. I don't think he needs to. So I'd like to see that shot just get out of him a little bit and maybe shoot that fadeaway from the foul line and less from 5 feet from the basket. So that's the biggest thing I would say, how to improve, because we know the shooting numbers are going to come around. He's not going to shoot as poorly as he has all season. But I just want to see him take get a couple shots out of his repertoire. And one shot I want to see him add a little bit more is that floater that he had brought into. I talked about this a couple pods ago, but
Mhm.
I want to see that floater come back because I think that's an important shot to have when he's snaking the pick and roll.
Yeah, I mean, I think for him it just comes down to efficiency. Like you said, I think a lot of the shots that we're seeing him miss that we just know he can make. We have several years of sample to be like, I can go through any of these years and pull up the shot that he missed, and I can pull up 400 examples of him making that
Mhm.
same shot.
Yeah,
Like those are
good
the
point.
ones I can't be worried about. It's just being more efficient with it. So. We'll keep an eye on it. We need Jayson Tatum. If the Celtics are going to realize any type of their potential, Jayson Tatum has to be Jayson Tatum, and maybe even the evolution of Jayson Tatum for that next step to occur. So we'll come back to that one as the season goes on here. But we both I gave Jayson Tatum a C. You gave him a C minus or a
C
C.
minus. Yep.
You gave him a
C
C
minus.
minus. Okay, perfect. Let's move on to Jaylen Brown here. I'll let you start this one here with the expectation and reality.
So the expectations that Jaylen Brown is the perfect complementary second star to Jayson Tatum. The reality, and it's an unfortunate reality, but his season has been derailed by COVID and the hamstring issue. So therefore, it's kind of tough to judge him too hard on his numbers. But the one thing that I'm seeing out of Jaylen is when he plays with force and he plays with athleticism, that's what you want to see out of Jaylen Brown. When Jaylen kind of has those lethargic nights that Ime, called mind boggling earlier in the season, that's when it's kind of mind boggling. You're like, where is the Jaylen Brown that explodes to the basket? And maybe this hamstring issue is lingering a little bit more than we knew, and that's why some days it was feeling good, some days it wasn't, and the days that it's feeling good, maybe he's more willing to drive to the basket. I don't know, right?
Mhm.
I'm just making inferences here, but that's the reality that I've seen. Is this season has been kind of what ifs for Jaylen, because he looked so good in the preseason. Even though he had COVID, he looked so good in the first game, and now it's like kind of inconsistency for Jaylen because of COVID and the hamstring issue.
Yeah, this was a tough one. I think I started at just like my gut reactions before I went in and tried to like dig into numbers and really think about. I tried to write down the five guys we're talking about. Like, what was the first grade that came to my mind? And I
Mm-hmm.
actually went with like a B plus to start, and I ended up with a B minus slash incomplete. Just because, like you said, it's so hard because the only thing to improve for me is like just he needs to get healthy and he needs to be able to play, with that aggression. Because when you think of Jaylen this season, obviously your mind jumps back to opening night. It jumps to his performance against Charlotte, him dropping, him pretty much before he went out against Miami, averaging basically like 26, 27 points a game. And just in the small sample size of his return from the hamstring, he's yet to break 20 points.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is the aggression that you're talking about. And is it the hamstring? And, it's moving forward, it is a real concern to think about, what that hamstring injury is going to do both physically to Jaylen's body and how that affects his ability to play aggressive, and also mentally, because it's just one of those injuries that you see all the time with guys that you don't really recover from fully until you just shut it down,
Yeah.
and you have that appropriate time to be able to rehab, heal. And so it's going to be lingering, and that can affect you mentally when you know that, hey, if I go too hard or I break too much or I, do this or that too aggressively, all of a sudden I'm back on the shelf again with this hamstring injury for 2 to 4 weeks or whatever it may be. So Jaylen's really tough to judge at this point. I ended up going with a B minus, like I said. Um, I mean, at the end of the day, same as Jayson. It comes down to who is Jaylen and who is Jayson. Are they the two surefire all stars that we're building this team around? That the expectations, not just of them individually, but of this team, are based on? Are they going to be them, or are they not going to be for whatever the reason may be?
Mm-hmm. And for Jaylen, in terms of how to improve, for me, it's just like he needs to simplify his game a little bit more. Like early on in his career, he kept things very simple. He caught the ball, he shot a corner three, or he caught it and drove to the basket. Now it's like he's trying. I don't know if there's more eyes on him from the defense. This is the first time he's really been the primary ball handler, especially when Tatum goes to the bench. But like he's not seeing the defense well at all. Like he's
Yeah,
not. There are many times, even if you just go look at the first quarter tonight, where he drew 2 or 3 guys, and the moment you see two, you got to move the ball, especially if that's what Ime wants out of you. That like I was paying attention to that tonight. I was watching the game. There were so many times I was like, wow, Jaylen, that was a bad decision. Even though it didn't turn into a turnover or a missed shot, it was like you had the guy wide open for the easy pass to make. Even the pass he made to Grant Williams, where he kind of threw that behind the back pass, I don't even
yeah,
know if that was the right pass. Like to me, I thought he should have kicked it opposite to Peyton Pritchard, and he threw it to Grant Williams, and he threw this fancy behind the back pass, and it was a great play. Grant hits the shot,
yeah.
but it's like, man, just simplify the game. Like you don't even need to do that, man. Like you could have just why did you need to do this spin move behind the back that you did, and there's just many times where I don't think he's seeing the read quick enough and recognizing where he needs to move the ball to. And if he starts
Mhm.
to see that, because I think Tatum is starting to see it really well and quickly, if he starts to see that, then I think that sky's the limit for this offense. Because right now Jaylen's been a little bit of a black hole, even though his shot attempts aren't crazy high. Like he's not shooting
Mhm.
over 20 attempts a game or anything like that. Tonight I think he shot like 13 attempts, and it may have been less than that. But that's my biggest way to improve for JB is get healthy, get explosive, get those points in the paint numbers back up to where they were in October. I think he was close to 13 in October, and he's at like 6 in November, and then start to move the ball.
Yeah, I mean, playmaking is something that we've talked about with him, that Ime's talked about with Jaylen, and it's funny. Like I said, there's a lot of things that happen in this Raptors game that really align with what we were going to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed even in that fourth quarter when he came back in late, there's and throughout the game, you were right. There was times whether he was driving or he was just bringing the ball out to do the long range one-on-one type scenario where he gets guys on him. And a couple times, what I was noticing is the Raptors were actually sucking their defense, and they didn't even care. I mean, granted, he wasn't shooting the ball well, that it was Jayson Tatum. And there was times where he could have made that quick skip pass to Jayson Tatum, who was wide open because his guy is sinking into the defense because they're collapsing on him to go to Jaylen Brown because they don't expect him to be able to read the defense or make that pass. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we're totally aligned with where he needs to improve, and that's not necessarily anything that's different from the beginning of the season. And where we always say Jaylen's the guy that progress is not always linear. Somehow it, for the most part, has been with him, and this is one
Mm-hmm.
of the areas that is lagging. Even though it seems that he's in, his 3-point shot making seems better, his ability to create one-on-one seems better, but now it's being counteracted by more film and being able to shut that down. And now he needs that counter move.
Yeah, and one last thing for all of our listeners out there that are interested in this conversation right now. The next game you watch for the Boston Celtics on Wednesday, and who we playing Wednesday, Will?
Philly.
Philly. So in the game against Philly, just count how many times Jaylen Brown throws a pass on time and on target, where there's a guy who's catching it in the shooting pocket, and has a half a step ahead on the defense. Because that's how you know it's on time, is if the defense is late to get out to them. If they're there, then the pass was late, right? So is it on time, ahead of the defense, and is it on target? Because that's what I'm going to be looking for next game, and I'll have that number. Hopefully, I'll have that number for people on the post game live.
All right, duly noted. Let's move on to our next guy here. We got Marcus Smart is up. You want me to take the expectation reality, or you want to take this one, Greg?
Go for it.
All right. So expectation for Marcus, he's moving to full-time point guard for the first time in his career. No longer is he going to be in that shooting guard role, playing off of Kemba Walker, Isaiah Thomas, Kyrie Irving. Name the point guard. Marcus Smart is now fulfilling that role. The expectation was for him to move into that, be able to be someone that can move the ball and raise his defense back to those all defensive levels while reducing his actual shooting output. The reality started slow, but over the last several games has become one of the more consistent Celtics players, has kept the ball moving, has improved his assist numbers, and throughout the season, been a little bit of a mixture of him making true to form Marcus game saving and winning plays and a few boneheaded plays, which you can argue that even though it wasn't fully representative of his game that night, is the entirety of it may have cost the Celtics games in different moments. So that's what I had for Marcus with expectation reality. Anything else you'd add to that? Because he's always a tough one where the numbers don't necessarily match up. So it's
For
kind of an
sure.
instinct feeling as you talk about him.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head on that one. And I'm ready to give my grade if you are.
Yeah, I gave him a B, and then I'll let you go ahead and say what you got and
Yeah, I
tell us
gave him
why.
a B as well. I actually just removed the B minus from my document here because I thought he played amazing tonight, even though he had some once again boneheaded plays that Marcus Smart does, like that ridiculous play at the end of the half.
So
It did,
stupid.
yeah, so stupid. But that's just what Marcus is. And for me with him, if you take away those two huge mistakes following at the end of games, he might even be a B plus A minus. I think Marcus has really been that good this season. His shooting numbers were abysmal at the beginning of the season, but he's been awesome, man. The last 10 games going into tonight, he was shooting 44% from the field to go along with 12.5 points, 7.1 assists, and 2 steals. I think it's 2.2 steals. So, like, you can knock him if you want, but he's really been doing everything that you could hope for from this guy. I forget who the guy is, but there's one guy that pops up on my Twitter feed from time to time who hates Marcus Smart. And even I saw he tweeted the other day that Marcus Smart was actually playing better than he could have hoped for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if Marcus is turning that guy around, I forget his name, then he's doing something right this year. And I really love what Marcus has been doing, man. I think his defense has been back to all NBA level. That's the most important thing that he's going to bring to this team. He got paid. He doesn't have to worry about getting his numbers up. That's the money he's got now is the most money he's ever going to make in his career, right? So all he has to do now is be a star in his role, and he's been great as a point guard over the past 10 games or so. I love how he's moving the ball. He's been getting by people. He's been, a lot of paint touches of late, and then he's just making the right read for the most part. Obviously, you're going to turn the ball over if you have the ball in your hands more. But
Mhm.
I think he's been great, man. I might even bump that up to a B plus.
Yeah, I mean tonight, just to use that as a jump off point, 21, 8, and 6 for him tonight. He was huge in the game, and he was someone that when we talk about the Celtics as a team needing to apply more rim pressure, just get more paint touches. I thought he established that mindset early on tonight and kind of kept it going throughout the game. Marcus Smart is Marcus Smart, like you said. To your point, there's kind of some plays you just got to kind of live with. It's almost that guy who's at your office job or at work with you that is sometimes he thinks he's the smartest one in the room and is sometimes too
Mm-hmm.
smart for his own good and thinks he's doing something that's next level, which is what I equate some of these bonehead plays like the one at the end of the end of the first half tonight where he tries to draw that foul and it's like, bro, that was like I know you think you're doing something that you're not doing, but you don't need to be doing that. Like
Yeah.
you're doing just fine. Just cut that shit out and then trimming that fat out of his game, whether it was him hoisting too many threes or whatever it may be. That's always kind of been the thing with Marcus that keeps him a little bit level. But to your point with what he was tasked to do this season, I thought it started slow, and I really think you laid out the numbers. He's been one of the better players over this last stretch where the Celtics are, I believe, 9-5 in the last 14. So he's been a catalyst for that. It's really hard to knock him when he gives you those intangibles that if you're going to be a successful team in this league, you need. And that's why he's so polarizing because it's, is he ever going to be an all-star? In my opinion, no. But he doesn't need to be. He just needs to be a consistent high-end role player that fills the gaps of what you need from him to do and just do that consistently and then cut down on those on the excess that doesn't need to be there. And he's been doing better and better of that as the season has gone on. So I'm very happy with a B for Marcus Smart. I think, just with anybody on this team, but he's one of the biggest guys. Just, I mentioned the open shot numbers. Just got to improve those open shot numbers because I genuinely do think Marcus Smart throughout his career has done an admirable job of becoming a better shooter. The biggest thing was just the efficiency of it. If it was him having nights where he was shooting 13 times or whatever it may be. And I think he may still hold the Celtics record where he's 11 of 22 or something from 3 one night a year or two ago.
That's
And so it was
insane.
just cutting down on that. It was not that he can't shoot. It was just he was taking the wrong shots. I think he's taking better shots now. Just need to hit more of those open shots, which I think he can do. I genuinely do because I believe he's not a bad shooter anymore. And I think some of those will start to go down for him.
Agreed. Let's get into our last guy here, and this is our guy, man. Our guy, Lob Williams. You know, I think let's get into the expectation reality first. So I'm doing this one.
Yeah, you go for it.
Okay. So with Lob, the expectation coming in this year was that he makes a jump, but struggles on the court due to his lingering health concerns. And he's pretty much what we expected. But I don't think we realize how dominant he would actually be in the minutes that he plays. He's missed the last 4 games, I think. I don't think it's for his knee. I think it's because he's sick, right?
It's really, really weird non-COVID illness. Like I think it must have been whatever Josh Richardson had.
Yeah, I think they said he had the flu. But nevertheless, he hasn't been on the court. But when he's been on the court, he's been playing a lot more than we ever thought possible from him. 30.2 minutes per game, up from 18 last year.
Yeah.
And that Lob Williams moniker is living up to expectations. He has 22 lob finishes this year. He had 49 all of last year. He's leading the team among regular players by a mile in net rating. His net rating is 10.7. JB has the next closest at 7. His rebound percentage is 15.4. And then the biggest stat, this is something that you and I have brought up early in the season, is his foul rate. He's averaging a career low, despite playing a career high in minutes. He's averaging a career low of 1.4 fouls per game. Last year in 18 minutes, he was at 2 fouls per game. And then the final stat I have for you on Lob is that he's contesting over 10 shots per game, which is good for 16th in the league and second on the team behind Al, who's 5th overall in the league at 12.2. But I think that's more of a product of people looking at Al and being like, I think I can take him.
He's 35. I can get by him right now. But yeah, man, what'd you give him for a grade?
I gave him a B+.
B+. I gave him an A-.
Okay.
Other than staying healthy, I gave him similar to Jaylen. I gave him an A-/incomplete. Just missing 8 games out of 21. It's tough to say that's a fully rounded grade, but I mean, you hit on everything that he's done, and when he's out there, how much he impacts this team on both ends of the floor. And for someone that we were concerned about, his minutes and him, what's he going to do with this bigger role? Because last year was, in a smaller sample size, smaller starting role. They usually he's playing about 18 minutes per game. The PER numbers were crazy. You could, extrapolate them out, and all of a sudden he's in conversations with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Michael Jordan. And it's like, all right, well, that's obviously not a true reality. We'll see what happens. And, he's been great. He's been great. Talked about it before. I would love for him to be kind of like that Clint Capella with maybe better passing. That's kind of like the vision of Lob Williams. And, 10 points, 10 rebounds, 1.8 block per game. You mentioned the other statistics that go along with it, just the contests that he has, playing 30 minutes per game. I was hoping, I think we talked about this on the preseason, probably. We were hoping to get, 24, 25 minutes out of him. And he's far surpassed that expectation right from the jump. And, I just hope that the health doesn't come into question. I'm really trying to, chalk up this last couple of games that he's missed here with the illness and not really hold that against, the history of him not being healthy. But at a certain point, there's just those guys where for one reason or another, they're always out of the lineup. And that's still the biggest fear with Lob Williams. But when he's in, I think he's been awesome. And I think him, along with Al, from game 1 to game 21, those have been the 2 most consistent players for the Celtics. And for that reason, year 4 Lob Williams, he gets an A- for me.
Yeah. I like that. I can't give him an A- because he hasn't been on the court as much as I want him to be, but B+, that's the highest grade I gave of the core 4. So I went B+ for Rob, B for Marcus, C for Jaylen, and C for Jayson Tatum. right? So
Yeah.
I'm a harsh grader. I think some
Yeah,
people
I'm
might,
a little easier than you. So if you come into Will's class, you're gonna get a little bit of a bump because I know what it's like to be the slacker. See, you were always the high achiever. You got
yeah,
to get this guy, get this. I'm like, this dude's trying. I'm gonna bump him up a little bit. So just
exactly.
to recap, I had Ime at a C plus. I had Jayson Tatum at a C. Jaylen Brown at a B minus slash incomplete. Marcus Smart at a B, and Lob Williams at an A minus slash incomplete as well. That's going to be part one of our first quarter grades. 21 games into the season, 11-10 Celtics. We're going to be back on Wednesday after the Celtics and Sixers game. We will give y'all a live reaction. Green with NB post game live will be coming at you on Twitter and YouTube. We will make sure to tweet about that. Make sure y'all are following us. Make sure y'all jump into the Discord. Make sure that you guys are subscribing and following the 617 podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Please rate, 5-star ratings. Hit us up with that. We love hearing from our friends, but we love hearing from those of you that we don't know yet and those that we want to make into our friends. Please go ahead and leave those comments and share this podcast with anybody that you know. Any other thoughts here, Greg, before we send the people on out of here?
I like doing these pods, man, where it's not just a game reaction. We get to kind of like look at some deeper numbers and look at the trends. Those are always more fun conversations for me to have. So I just really enjoyed this. Thank you for everyone for listening. We're gonna get you out of here today with a little black sheep optimist. And actually, you know what? We're gonna call a little change. This is some unreleased shit. I just laid this down in the studio over break with my guy Lewis Pratt down here. I don't know when it's gonna release, but it's called Disrespect, and you guys are getting a sneak peek at it
All
because what
right.
the hell, man? Check it out. New shit. This is from Manakis. This is not from Black Sheep Optimist. This is from Manakis featuring Lewis Pratt, produced by David Price. This one is called Disrespect. Peace.
Peace.